Please, if I may, because I would like just to share with the audience as well, with the panel, my own experience at Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University in creating that particular momentum within the culture itself. And I think one of the things that we have done, because this university is we are celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. We were the first in the Arab world to go online in education. And we started from zero because we hadn't have anything to benchmark against at that time in 2002. So we created a set of values for the organization to whom it's important to understand within the workers, the faculty, the admin staff in the university, as well as the learners, the customers as well. We set out our 5 points and dimensions of our values. One, we are learner-centric, and that is the core of any smart learning. The second was about game changer. If you are a faculty joining HBMSU, then you have to have that mindset of the game changing in higher education. Mm-hmm. The third was together we grow, how we are going to be able to partner with the public and private sector as a higher education institution. The fourth was result oriented. We are not just only with a gimmick of words and all these things. So we need to be having something tangible. The fifth one was fueling innovation. Mm. And I think these 5, a set of 5 values, it actually created that momentum. Today, I'm very proud to say that I have at HBMSU a team of wolves, because they are all, passionate about creating, finding the problem, solving the problem, and to be able to be pace setters within the Arab geography that we are currently.
Mm. So may I ask then, Dr. Mansour, because this is also a question that we got in the Q&A. If you are to transform your higher education, your university, towards more of what I understand it, a digitalized business model, where you seem to be today, how much can you reuse your resources and skills from sort of the traditional university? Can you do this in the same sort of context, or do you need a new set of skills, a new type of resources and people?
Not at all. And I think it's a good question. What we have developed currently is 2 dimensions of the quality, because what matters today in the world of education is people are talking about, their concern is all about quality, dimension. We have 2 levels of this thing to be able to share with the other institutions as well, if they wish. One, the readiness to be digitally transformed. How we're going to do the digital transformation. So how are the measure of the quality standards to be able to measure my readiness to be able to be transformed? The second part is the quality measures on the output of an online education system, which is the learner's experience and what it matters all. And those 2 dimensions, I think we can share it today. The dimension number 1, which is the readiness, we have developed in a research project with the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland, right in the beginning of 2010. And we have the second version in 2021. I think the measures and the standards criteria for readiness of digital transformation and to be ready. And the second one is, of course, the benchmarking set data that we have launched along with the international organizations as well as universities around the world. We have currently almost 37. We started with 5 and 5 other institutions online. We created that momentum of standards that to be globally usable and implementable. And just a few months ago, we shared this experience as well in the UNESCO conference, which was handled with the higher education in Barcelona, in Spain. So I think we can share these sets of standards that it will facilitate for transformation. But in this case, I think I should say also, there are, for this early signals, those people who are want to be digitally transformed, want to be going to the smart learning, online learning. I think they have to work around 4 major dimensions and characteristics. And those characteristics, by the way, the 4 pivoting points are: first, the learners. We must understand that the role of learners are not the students anymore. They will become, and I think a couple of you, like Arina and Anika, I think you mentioned about the lifelong learner, and then Gary as well. So this role is totally different from being a recipient of knowledge. We're going to go to the co-creation of knowledge. And believe me, Anika, when I met every year the learners on our university, I said, you guys in this university are in the driving seat. The first question comes from the learners: if we are in the driving seat, what the hell the administration and faculty are doing then? I said, well, we are your Google map. And do you believe that the Google map can function without you entering the direction? Never. And sometimes we outsmart the Google map because we know the road better than they do, but we face a problem that road is under construction and we didn't know about it, and Google knew about it. So we are the wisdom, we are the faculty and the administration. So I think the learner's role completely changed. And I think when learner roles change, and I think Professor Irina as well, she mentioned about democratization of learning. That is where the voice of customers, that is where the learner centricity is all about. And I think this is what it differentiates what is going to be coming up in early signals for educators around the world. The second is the faculty. The faculty, I think, we don't adopt anything in FMSU called something called teaching. It's about mentoring and coaching. And I think that is the most difficult task that ever any faculty can have, because it exposes the capability of development in the mindset. We don't have kind of ready-made menus for it. And if the smart learning is all about individualization, then it becomes much more harder to the faculty to be trained in the same way. So it needs kind of understanding much more. The third component is the curriculum. The curriculum is available online, and I think that itself has lots of aspects. The fourth part of it, I think, is the learning environment. Today, the space and time are irrelevant. And when it comes to be in that way, then I think that when I was doing some of the promotion on online learning in our geography in the Arab world, I was telling people in the 2003 at that time, I said, well, don't you think that shopping is essential? They say, yes. I think, what do you think that shopping malls as brick and mortar does anymore? I said, no, it's not. That's for the 2003. I told them, if the banking is essential, they said, yes. Are the banks as brick and mortar, essential anymore? I said, no. So if that is the trend, so trend would be schooling is essential, Anika. Schools are not. Learning is essential. Universities are not. And I think that's, that influences lots of changes in the higher education, which is going to be coming up in the, I would not say a couple of years, but a few years ahead, much more sooner than we anticipate.
Right. That is a question, right? I mean, we're all waiting for it, but when will it actually happen? When will we, tip over that point so we actually have more online?
Because it's still the question of education is. I remember just only in the history, the Wright brothers, when they invented the flight in early 19th century, 1902, I think. The first aircraft which, crossed over Atlantic, it was in 1928 or 19, yes, something like that. And I think at that time, one of the newspapers in the United States, they said that with a headline, "The Adventurers." And I think people who are actually putting forward for the online learning, I think a smart learning for tomorrow will become a must for the world. And I think that is the, the answer to the question that I have already proposed in my introductory talk. Yeah, yes, I think it's not just only we to be faced with the quick problems. I think we need also to become a learning organization. I think organizations around the world been taught a lesson by the pandemic, which closed everything, including the education and other parts of the business as well. I think the pandemic has put all leaderships across the organizations, education is inclusive as well, to a very harsh experience. And I think those will win for the and will sense the early signals. Those who are actually, their organization were well equipped and well agile to be able to learn from 2 years of, I would call 2 years of experience. So I think it's not just a matter of how to face any new things. And I think the lessons should be learned from what we had all through during the pandemic. All sectors of business. I call upon my colleagues and fellows, academicians and educators around the world to have a paradigm shift and to have a total transformational thinking about education overall, including the higher education as well. I think the signals are very clear. The education arena will not be the playground that we used to have then. I think we need, like Irina said, an entrepreneurialism in terms of the faculties and in the higher education staff to be able to absorb the changes which is coming up in the near future. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for this invitation. I really appreciate the part of this panel. I'm going to, in this introduction, I just to put kind of question to this as well. The way that I have structured to set the floor for advancing the thinking, early signals of 2023. In this brief talk, I would like to warn against the occurrence of a major action that I see hovering over the horizon currently, about to fall over our head. I think it's a fortunate in a way. I'm not going to say fortunate in that sense of optimism, but I think fortunate because we can predict, because we're going just to be able to touch signs for it. Unlike the pandemic COVID-19, which happened all of a sudden. When I talk about these two concepts, it's a concept and its effect on education specifically. So if it falls, I think what is coming up, it casts heavy shadows, ladies and gentlemen, over all aspects of life and leaves worldwide repercussions from which no one will escape. By major action, I foresee somehow very big signals in terms of World War III. This has been in the atmosphere filtered. By worldwide repercussions, I mean the negative effects on education. So when a journalist actually asked Albert Einstein after the end of World War II and the mass destruction that followed after the first use of the nuclear bomb, what kind of weapons, they asked him, the journalist asked Einstein, what kind of weapons is expected to be used in the World War III? Einstein said, and I like this quote, I don't know with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with the sticks and stones. And I think this particular say of Einstein will a little bit give us a little bit of alarm in terms of education, what needs to be done, because the current circumstances, actually, in the light, I mean, the wars in the region, the instability in different parts of the world, are we on the verge of a third world war? The answer is that we are most likely on the verge, and also there are evidence into this. I don't want to go into the evidence. And the second, of course, is the circumstances where the world's second war. Let's take a quick look at the circumstances of the outbreak of the war, in which very similar to those of the outbreaks of the current war between certain countries. On July, I think, 7th in 1937, the Empire of Japan invaded the Republic of China due to some border issues. It was a full-scale invasion, which often regarded as the real beginning of the Second World War. And here are the important, I think, question arises. What prevents the current war between countries from turning into a third world war, in which many countries of the world join, each supporting one of the two warring countries, regardless of whether or not you agree with me on this proposition, or about the percentage of possibility that the current war will turn into a world war. We must be prepared to face this possibility, I would say. Since my first concern is education, I will raise the following question. Can education be suspended if World War III breaks out? The answer is yes, and I don't think it will be so. Then how many years education will continue to be suspended? And we know that the World War continues for several years. And I think the first war, it was 1914 till 18, and then the second from 39 to 45, 1900. We can say it is not acceptable to get education suspended for several years. Then the second question, are the students allowed to go to school as usual despite the ongoing war? The answer is emphatic, no. So by analysis the situation, we can draw the following conclusions, I would say. The education process cannot be suspended for the duration of the war. Second, it is not acceptable to allow students to go to school during war and their lives are in danger. Three, hence, the truly unacceptable education is the education received at school. So the final conclusion on which there is no disagreement is the following, I would say. Education must continue, but the school attendance must be suspended. Now, the critical question, the most critical question now arises is, how can education continue while suspending a student from going to school? The only reasonable answer, I would say, that imposes itself on this question is that education should be done via electronic media, which we call online education. And I think maybe through the discussion would put some, shed light on what we have the experience of this issue. And I would conclude my introduction by a final question, the question that should be answered by those interested in education everywhere in the world is, what measures and arrangements we have to take to ensure the continuation of education while students don't go to school? If the Third World War breaks out, a war whose will be very serious based on the highly sophisticated weapon systems available now, in addition to what Einstein alluded actually to his smart answer I presented at the very beginning. And I think what I'm raising the questions is here, ladies and gentlemen, is not to replicate what has happened in terms of education during the pandemic for the last 2 years, because people, they got fascinated with technology, but however, they didn't have a clue how to be able to implement that technology in terms of the real life. There are very, very few institutions around the world who've been successfully dealing with this aspect of online education. So I think that's a question I would definitely shed light on while the discussion is going on. So I think we need to be ready. This is not going to be an easy thing. this needs in field of education a total transformational thinking. And I would call the 3 T's, because unless educators around the world will go a little bit, there are reluctancy actually to go to online education. And of course, the COVID brought up this issue, but still educators are in dilemma, I would call it, regarding the quality and other things to beside that. So by this, I conclude my introduction. I think we need to be ready. The signals are there. Are our education institutions on higher education and general education are ready? Because there were a UNESCO report, of course, being published a few months ago about the loss of education during the pandemic over the last 2 years around the world. So I think that's the signals that I would say education institutions and educators must be ready for those type of signals. Thank you.